Now, the conversation surrounding Tobago's autonomy is one that we continue to hear day after day after day. But as the Prime Minister announced a couple weeks ago that we would see that Tobago Island government bill coming before the Parliament very soon, the conversation has erupted and everyone is coming to the fore to have their say. But there's the question, do we support, do we reject, or do we make recommendations for amendment before the bill goes before the Parliament? There are those on one side saying that new consultation is needed based on the fact that so many years have passed since the last consultation, and there are so many new players on the scene who deserve to have a say. While there are others who are saying that it's a start and a step in the right direction. This morning we have Mr. Ashworth Jack on with us here in studio. He is a former Assemblyman and former minority leader. Good morning, Mr. Jack, and welcome.
Good morning, Ms. Felix, and thanks for having me.
No problem. I know that you have been hearing the rhetoric and the conversations on all sides and from far and wide, from all sectors of the society. And for some persons, it may be misinformation. For some, it's disinformation. And for some, it's manipulation. On the entire spectrum, where are you sitting this morning?
I'm an officious bystander. I'm looking on, and I'm wondering, with all what that has been said, who is the most important players in this thing? Is it the political organization, is it the social organization, or is it the people of Tobago? And for me, I've seen it like that. And I've seen some of the articles been put out. I hear some of the comments being made. And the only thing that I could have thought about when I keep hearing some of these things is that the more things change, is the more they remain the same. And, you know, I heard one young Tobagonian made a statement about taking little and living long. And it reminded me of a statement made by another Tobago leader years ago, that half a loaf is better than none. Mm. And so I'm wondering if it is that Tobagonians have, or some Tobagonians, because I'm 150% Tobagonian, if some Tobagonians have just decided that they must take the easy way out, and if they are not looking down the road and seeing, why do we want our children and our grandchildren to have to fight this same fight 16 years from now, 20 years from now? If we have not looked at the pattern that Tobago have made extremely small incremental changes once every 18 to 25 years. And just think that we are in 2024. And if we have the same problem, the next change we will have will be about 2053, 2054.
Correct.
And is it that we want to pass this legacy of dependency onto another generation? You know, and then when you look at some of the things that people say, because like people speak from both sides of the mouth based on where they sit. I remember in 2013, and I was very involved in the politics, and I was very involved in the autonomy issue. There was a bill before the House that offered Tobago 8% of the national budget, and it offered a couple other things. And I remember there was a flyer being put out by the PNM, I'm not afraid to say it, that says Ashworth Jack was selling out Tobago because 8% was not enough.
Right.
I am looking at what people saying to take the little and live long is 6%. So we have reduced from 8 to 6, and we said, hey, that's not a bad figure. So I'm wondering if we think we're counting backwards.
Right.
I've seen where the government, or the PP government of the day, was saying, okay, we will increase the mileage that Tobago directly controls from 6 to 11. And I saw the same people, MPs, present MPs, a person who was in the assembly, saying, no, we're entitled to 200 miles. Even though international law would not give us as a part of the Twin Island Republic, because the central government does not reside in Tobago. And we knew that the most that you would have gotten was 12. But people said, no, 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 we need 200. The same people are now telling me today, 8 is enough. Take a little and live long. So you move from 11 to 8. And you say, that's cool for now, because it's we giving it. And so I'm saying to people, you can't blow hot and cold on the same thing. The exact thing. But if we look at the history of the autonomy fight, this bill is the worst bill that have ever been put before the Parliament for autonomy. It is by far the worst. If we go back to 1977, and I say to people, regardless of your political affiliation, every Tobagonian must read Robinson's motion, which was debated or presented on the 14th of January, 1977. Up to today, it is said to be one of the best presented and researched motion that ever went to our Parliament. It sought to compare Tobago to the rest of the Caribbean, to show the size of Tobago, to show the size of the rest of the Caribbean, to show what the potential of Tobago, and to make a case for why Tobago must not be treated the way it was. And I remember around the same time, I think it was in the late 60s, early 70s, it was said of Tobago that the Caribbean is the third world's third world. And if the Caribbean is the third world's third world, then Tobago is the Caribbean third world. And it sought, and it wasn't said by us, it was said by a leader in the Caribbean. And what it sought to do is to show how far back we were. And so, when I hear people speak the way they speak about these matters, about what we should take and what we should wait for, and we should make incremental changes, and my question to the people who are making those statements would be, if you are making $1,100 per month, if you were making $1,100 in 2013, and then somebody came and reduced your salary to $800, with the price of everything going up, when you see everything changing, would you say that, okay, I'm going to take a little and live long? Tobago is in one of the best positions it have ever been openly, because we have always been in a good position. What have happened is that information have never been shared. But we now live in the information age. You can just go on your computer, on your phone, and you can find information that otherwise would not have been available. And so some of the things I want to do the comparative analysis.
But before we get into the comparative analysis, I want to get into some of the key points of the narratives that we're seeing out there. As you know, we see campaigns being launched to encourage persons to support the bill. But a part of that thrust and that campaign, as you indicated, is the incremental changes. What is being presented is better than what we have. One of my personal questions that I have raised in many forums is, persons are saying Tobago has lost out on X amount billions of dollars because of its rejection of the bill in 2021, I believe. Was it 2021 or 2020? The last time it came before the Parliament. Tobago is now, between then to now, has lost out on so many millions of dollars. But I'm asking the question, has the calculation been done now that Tobago, based on increased responsibility, right? Now that they are responsible for more, who has done the assessment that 6.8 is really more? You understand what I'm asking?
Happy that you raised that.
Because if you are telling me, okay, you have 6.8 now, but you have a lot more to do, is it really more than 4.03? Let's just put it out there. Because if I have, I use the example again. If I have one child and I'm getting $1,000 for that one child, and I now have 3, and I'm getting 2,000, am I really getting more? Because when I had 1, I had 1,000. Now I have 3, I only have 2,000.
So in a worse position than you were before.
Okay, so I'm asking, has the assessment and
that you raised that.
Critical analysis of the new areas of responsibility and what that will cost to the THA, has that been done?
I'm happy that you raised that, because that is something that I have been debating with people all the time. I said, you turned down 8. That was given about the same responsibilities also. But you tell me 6.9, but you tell me are giving you more responsibilities. How are you funding? Is it that you're increasing the allocation based on the increased responsibility? Or is it that the argument that you're making that we have lost out, is it where, can it stand up? Because losing out means that I have the same responsibility, but I have an increased allocation.
Correct.
But what we have is increased responsibility. And what you have done is that you attempted, without showing me the analytical data, tell me, I'm giving you this additional 2% to take care of this additional responsibility.
Yeah, but then there's also the conversation, we could have had sandals with this. We could have had hotels with this. We could have had
was not going to be with that.
We could have had a better port with this. But how could you have done that if you had more areas of responsibility? And then the argument comes up. I remember I was watching one of the sessions that they were having late an evening, and the rebuttal to that was, as a leader, you have the ability to reprioritize your finances.
No,
I was quite confused because such a response is quite unclear and it doesn't meet the mark.
It's not only unclear, it is deceptive. Because if you have a small pool and there's nothing that could be set aside, because all these things are not wants, they are needs. What do you do? You move it from one need to next and allow one need to suffer? There will always be a problem. And this issue of what we lost and what we didn't lose, and the Sanders, and those are muted arguments. And let me explain, especially this thing with Sanders. Sanders had nothing to do with our allocation. Sanders had to do with that $7 billion loan that the people of Trinidad and Tobago was taking to build a hotel. I don't know if it made sense or it didn't make sense. It's something that I've never really made any pronouncements on, and I still do intend to. But don't come and use that in a way that to show that because you didn't take something that was not good for you in the first place, it was less than you was getting before, less than you and your people said was not enough. You give me less and then tell me take it because I give you. I don't think that the PNM have any moral authority to speak about Tobago bills, because, as I said, history have shown that every time there was a major shift in the dynamics of Tobago in terms of its responsibility.
Right.
Let me just finish this. What caused them to be so little given is because they needed a special majority to deal with some of those entrenched areas. And the organization on every turn, the organization that says we will not support all this additional responsibility, have been the PNM. We can go all the way back to 77, 78 when Dr. Williams said he will not contribute to the breaking up of the union when the first report come out. Then there was the issue of the other report in the 96 period when then Prime Minister Patrick Manning says this could lead to the breakup of Trinidad and Tobago by giving Tobago more responsibility. And so now we hear people saying this is too much responsibility to give Tobago at one time. What makes Tobagonians so inferior that we cannot manage our own affairs?
Understood. But one of the questions that the young persons want to know, and we see the youths are now coming together by means of the People's National Movement to host sessions, one taking place on Sunday at Barcode, to have the discussion among youth, and that's something that I highly support.
Of course it is.
Young persons coming together from all spheres, all colors, all sides to have the critical discussion without external manipulation.
I hope without external manipulation.
Without external manipulation, but coming together and truly having their voices heard and expressing some of their concerns and questions and making recommendations. But I say that to say, when you feel the pulse of the young persons on the ground, I'm not hearing persons saying we want to reject this bill. I am hearing that persons are saying, what are the collective recommendations to make this bill better before it goes before the Parliament, that we can see the much needed changes and have the progress that is needed over the next few years?
And I fully agree with that. I'm saying that I am not a reject outright anything that comes before the House. I am saying look at it and saying, listen, this is what you are given. This is what have been offered before. This is what we think is best for us. And make the recommendation and says, no, we will not settle for this. This is what we think Tobago deserve. Not only that, but you can then argue and put forward evidence to show why you deserve it, because there's more evidence in this space now than have ever been in terms of Tobago's contribution to the national's development. And so I don't think the position should be we just reject this bill outright. It should be, okay, this is your starting point, because every negotiation has a starting point. So this is your starting point for negotiation. This is where we are in terms of, okay, the issue of lawmaking, it mightn't go far enough, but these are the additional responsibilities we think Tobago deserve. 6.9 is to be rejected out of hand. This is what, and even the issue now of a 6.9% of the budget has to be revisited for whatever it's worth. When there was a 4.03 to 6.9, which of course we never got a 6.9, and there was a 6.9 for a reason. It took into consideration, I've said before, the lack of multiplier effect and spending throughout a number of stuff. But that was never taken into consideration by no administration. But we also have a situation where they were saying to Tobagonians, but they didn't allow you to take up the taxes as Act number 40 provided. A number of things where the government stood in the way of it happening. But they were also saying to Tobagonians, and I've heard the Prime Minister say it on a political platform, that Tobago only brought, I think, $300-something million to the coffers. That is deceptive, because if you don't allow us to take up all the taxes that we are entitled to, how then do you arrive at the figure? Because all you're doing is using the small amount that is taken up based on what you have allowed. And you did that by breaking the law, because Act number 40 says, upon coming into force of this act, that within 3 months, the THA must then send the financial rules. That was sent on 2 occasions by 2 different administrations. Neither was ever accepted and put into place. That being said, there's now the acceptance. I would like to think the acceptance, because we've seen it with our eyes, of Tobago being a major and becoming a major player in the production of gas in the Caribbean. We are now producing 200,000 cubic meters of gas as we speak, as I would have said about a month or so ago, from Block 22. When the Calypso field comes on stream in a couple of months or a year and something, they will be producing another 1-point-something million cubic meters per gas per day. And then if you look at what happened yesterday or sometime this last week, there was also the call circular for the bidding for a number of other blocks right outside, and these blocks are not bid for in the dark. They knew For years, they knew how much gas was in those areas, and that because at the time, gas didn't have a higher value. So a lot of people, they just left it alone. Now that the gas, because of the issue of clean energy, is becoming a major thing, there's a premium to be paid for that. And with all this in mind, this is why they mad rush to bring this bill and give you 6.9, because it locks you in for another 20, 25 years to a 6.9. And therefore, Tobago's rate of development and growth will always be stymied vis-a-vis what happens in our sister island, Trinidad. Because if you get $6 of every $100, there's only so much progress you can make. And not only that, but when you see what is happening, how many scholarships have been offered to Tobagonians out of the 4 or 5 scholarships that goes for every block that is rented? There's already 4 rented. Have any Tobagonians gotten a scholarship? And it's normally 4 to 5 scholarships for block. Have any Tobagonian been given 1 scholarship to go and do any of the related fields for oil and gas? The high level computers and stuff that comes as part of that package. Where can a Tobagonian go and sit down in an office or somewhere and have the use of some of these very high level equipment? No place in Tobago have benefited from that. Can anybody in Tobago tell me what is the rental value of the block that have been rented?
All right. We're going to come back and we're going to continue the conversation right there. And guys, we want to take a break right here and see you soon.
Let's go. It's a brand new morning. Rise up.
Morning, Tobago, right here on Tobago Updates. Now, we have been chatting with former Assemblyman and former Minority Leader, Mr. Ashworth Jack. And we stopped off right where we were discussing Tobago's actual contribution towards the national pie, but specifically with the oil and gas finds that can be found in Tobago's waters.
I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and then I'm going to go back and say why we must never go back to that. Now, if we're going to have a discussion about sharing national wealth, I must know what I bring to the table, and you must know what you bring to the table. But both of us must be on the same page. What happens is that all the data and everything is collected by the Ministry of Energy and Ministry of Finance and stuff in Trinidad. If that data is not brought to the table and shared in an honest way, how do we know that what we are contributing is what you tell us we are contributing? But there are a number of things that are done that are very deceptive. And a couple of examples would be, if you're renting blocks in 2013 or 2011, somewhere like that, what is the rental value of these blocks and why isn't that public? Because all the time you tell me,
have the information?
No, it does not. It is kept confidential by the Ministry of Energy. If scholarships are offered to do a number of things, why doesn't the whole country know how many scholarships are offered? And why isn't there a public call for persons to apply for these scholarships? If these blocks are in Tobago, why isn't there a quota for Tobago? But the most deceptive of them all is why up to today, up to yesterday was something out. Why are all these blocks, in terms of their geographic location, referred to as off Trinidad? They're right outside of Tobago. Trinidad is way down the other side, and they tell me 40-something miles off Trinidad, northeast of Trinidad. If we're going to be honest, why don't we simply say 7 miles, 10 miles, 15 miles, and this is going to be northeast of Tobago? In that way, we know you're honest. In that way, we know that we're coming with clean hands to discuss this thing. But when every time, even the companies, international companies, and I don't know if they've been told to use Trinidad as the reference point, but all of them are referring to these oil fields as of Trinidad. And that could only be political deception, because they want the people in Trinidad, because they have the larger population, to continue to believe that Tobago is being unreasonable in its request. Because this is outside of Trinidad and you want so much of this thing, we granting you something. And I've said this before and I want to repeat it. That same thing was done years ago in terms of gas. When they was talking about gas and where the fields are in relation to a geographic point, a central point, it was always referred to as of Trinidad. But if you go in Tobago every night, you see as you further east you go, it becomes parallel to where you are. That or a lot of these gas fields are outside of Tobago. We have come too far. Technology is available for us to be able to pinpoint where these things are and accurately report them in terms of their geographic location to either Tobago or Trinidad. If it is outside of Tobago, Tobago is the closest point, then we should use Tobago as a reference point. And it can't be fair to Tobagonians to continue to believe that Tobago contributes very little, when in truth and in fact, Tobago sits on a bed of oil and gas.
Understood. And when persons are saying, why would someone accept a bill that would cripple Tobago? What aspects of the bill do you think are crippling to Tobago?
No, I think what it does is that it locks you in. And I can't say that it cripples Tobago. I said it doesn't, because it's a little better. There's a couple more things than you're getting now, except that you're getting 6.9, not sure where it goes. There's a 2-mile increase. But my question to people is this. Is it that you're telling me, take what you think I deserve, or I should get what I deserve? And that is my problem. My problem is that it does not give Tobago what Tobago rightly deserves. Tobago would be a major player in a year or two in the gas production. You know, I was smiling when you were reading the news headlines about Narendra Modi being in Guyana. And a lot of people are hustling to Guyana because Guyana is what we always know Guyana would have been. Guyana could not have been between Venezuela, Brazil, and not have gas. God can't be so unfair to put gas and oil in Venezuela, the largest deposit in the world, in Brazil, extremely large, and skip over Guyana. So we know Guyana was going to have it. Tobago is in a similar position. If you look at Tobago population size and what these gas fields are expected to yield, if Tobago was an independent island, then Tobago would be a major player in terms of what it benefits from the gas fields. We're talking about one gas field, which I think is the Calypso, that is expected to yield 3.4 trillion cubic meters of gas. If we got $1 from that, one TT dollar, then talking about 3.4 trillion TT dollars in the 34 years it is expected to be in operation. Tobago can't spend $3.4 trillion, not even 100 years, because of the size of the population and the size of the land space. So we will be able to save for future generations way down the road. And that is one field. What about the other fields that are now coming, which are larger blocks, and that is expected to yield as much or even more?
Right. And that speaks to how forward-thinking are our leaders. How much of the planning is for the next 10 generations as opposed to the next election?
You know, this is a very controversial statement I'm going to make, but I've come to the place in my life that I say what I think is right. You know, part of why Afro people continues to be lost and to just take stuff is because we have lost that sense of generational history. right? Our foreparents was ripped, as you said, untimely ripped out of Africa and brought to this part of the world. And we would thought that it was backward, and until you go there and you go to the ancient cities and stuff. But what is happening here is that if you don't have a sense of your history, then anything anybody tell you is correct. And what we have to do is that we have to look at what we have lost in terms of the history and tell ourselves we must not pass on this dark lost period to our children. Our children must know, and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren, that what we have done is prepare the ground for they to succeed. Every generation must do better than the generation before them. And the only way you can do it is if you set the groundwork, you set the foundation for that. These governments and the Tobago House of Assembly, the people of Tobago, every Tobagonian have to do that. There's an old saying that they say, full belly man, always telling hungry belly man, wait, where are you crying for? And that is what we're seeing. What are you waiting for? I will get a salary, I will get recognition. So take whatever little you get and live long. Take a half a loaf now, when I'm in fact getting a loaf. And so I'm saying to young Tobagonians especially, the lure of saying, okay, we will get a couple dollars more is one thing. But is that the value of what Tobago brings to the table? If Tobago value is properly placed, you won't get a couple dollars more, you'll get a whole lot of money more, and you'll be able to have a whole lot more opportunities in terms of development. Part of the reason why so many people are leaving Tobago is because the opportunities is not available for their upward growth. And we are saying that if we're going to bring all this to the table, and if we have to be treated as an equal partner, not as a stepsister, then we are going to be in a position where we can retain a lot of our talent, because they will be able to create more employment opportunities, and not only more, but better paying employment opportunities. So we could probably get some people getting some $87,000 a month too.
Understood. And as we round up the discussion this morning, and we harp on the importance of those bipartisan conversations, some persons are saying, well, so much consultation already happened already. I stayed up after 12 in Signal Hill when I was small to contribute to the discussion. And there are some persons who are saying, well, back then, you were making recommendations and preparing for the time that we're in now. But if we are now here and we're about to pass that bill, then it may be a bit outdated.
That's why change
how
is the only
important
constant.
is it to come together and make recommendations, not for today, but for the future and for what is to come?
But having consultation is always important. And I'm saying you can stay on your side of the fence and back, and I stay on my side of the fence and back, but nothing changes. We just, it's like howling to the moon. Nothing will change. You just will see the moon rise, and then the sun will set the next morning, and then you realize the moon rises again the next day. But it's in the same place. Nothing changes. But consultation must be on equal footing. People must come understanding that you can't come with your master's bidding. You have to come looking at what Tobago position is. And I mean from anybody. It doesn't speak to any specific side. And once that happens, then people will be able to say, listen, and only that, I think people have to be brave enough to say, I am willing to lose, whether it be position, whether it be whatever, once I am in the right. I must be making the best recommendation. Because what is scary for me is that some of the people have children. And of course, they expect to have grandchildren and great-grandchildren. When you look back, I remember saying to one assemblyman some years ago, we were in the house, And his contribution was so terrible. When I came outside, I said to him, I said, I need to talk to you. And he said, what happened? I said, if your grandchildren went into Hansard and read what you just said, do you think your grandchildren would be proud of their grandfather? We became friends after that. He said to me, he said, Jack, you know, you're right. You know, I know this is going to come up. Every time I speak, there's going to be something to be said. So I know this is going to come up. It is going to be said that I walked out of a debate in 2012 on the same autonomy issue. And I always think it's interesting that people tell half of the truth. In 2013, a bill was taken to the House on internal self-government to amend the Constitution. Section 29(4) of the Tobago House of Assembly Act says the Tobago House of Assembly cannot propose a bill that seeks to change, abrogate, amend any section of the Constitution. Because it was going to do that, we knew as soon as it gets to the Cabinet was just going to throw it in a corner because it broke the law. And our argument at the time, myself, Roddy Kwaku, Steve Jack, I think it's Yvette, who said at the time, was listen, bring this thing as a motion, as it's provided for by law. You can write the bills, you can do everything, but it cannot be debated in the House based on the Tobago House of Assembly Act, Section 29, subsection 4. They want to prove a point. They didn't want it to go anywhere because they wanted to make a political point that they're going to reject it. That is what's happening now. They're bringing it saying the THA is going to reject it because the THA cannot accept what is here because of how far back it takes us. And so the argument is, you see, we bring this thing and they reject it. So don't vote for them. The thing is, have this thing covered the basis of what Tobago needs for today and for into the future. Why did we become independent if we didn't think that we wanted to do something for our children? And you know, when I see these things, you know, I was going through the Guardian newspaper of the 30th of August 1962. And you know what the headline said? Trinidad set to become independent. And it makes me still wonder if that is not the mindset that there's Trinidad and then there's this other place that are hangers on that does not deserve to be treated as equal.
Understood. I want to thank you so much, Mr. Jack, for coming and bringing those perspectives in your area of a former, in your capacity as former minority leader and assemblyman to the Tobago House of Assembly. Guys, we're going to take a quick break right here and we'll be back with much more right after this. See you soon.